Hello everyone, this is CRH Films. Today, I'll tell you about the 2010 film Lock Up, based on real events. A father sends his unruly son to a boarding school that feels more like a center of torment, where they teach respect for parents and control aggression. Teenager Fran communicates with his friends through video calls, drinks beer, and smokes cigarettes. Suddenly, his father Luis enters the room. He wants to wake up early tomorrow, and Fran's conversation keeps him from sleeping. Fran responds rudely, saying his father kicked him out of his room, but his father doesn't leave. He tries to talk to his son, but it's in vain. In the morning, a tired and angry Luis heads to work. He manages a pet store. Meanwhile, Fran skips school and hangs out with friends, listening to music, drinking beer, and doing forbidden things. Fran's teacher informs Luis that his child has completely abandoned his studies. Later, a call comes from the hospital. They ask him to pick up his underage troublemaker. Upon arrival, Luis meets Miguel's parents, Fran's friend. They are unhappy that their son is hanging out with Fran and believe he's a bad influence. After waiting for his son's examination to finish, Luis tries to talk to Fran about his behavior. But another conversation ends in an argument, and Fran storms off the car and leaves. When Luis returns home in the evening, he doesn't find his son. Fran went to a party to drink, smoke, and do drugs. Alone and troubled, Luis celebrates his son's 17th birthday. Disturbed by his inability to connect with his son, he searches online for ways to communicate with teenagers. Luis stumbles upon the Simca social program aimed at curbing aggressive and disrespectful behavior in teenagers. He reads reviews from parents of troubled teens who are happy to have finally found common ground with their kids. Late at night, a stoned Fran returns home. He stops by his father's room, but Luis turns off the light to avoid another argument. The next day, Luis attends the program presentation. A man in an expensive suit takes the stage with an authoritative voice and fiery speech. He assures the audience that this program will transform rebellious teens into disciplined and purposeful individuals. Meanwhile, Fran continues his carefree life. Miguel, after a lecturing monologue from his mother, promises not to associate with Fran anymore. And during a phone call, a girl tells Fran not to make any serious plans for the future between them. Fran starts drinking as a way to cope. When Luis returns home, he realizes he has no other option. Specially trained individuals arrive at their house and take Fran away. Fran tries to resist and calls for help. He believes his father will save him, but Luis hands over Fran's belongings to the workers. They shove him into a van and take him to the boarding school, situated amidst picturesque landscapes. Oscar, the head supervisor, greets him. He's displeased to see Fran half-dressed and in handcuffs. Oscar orders the restraints to be removed. Fran thinks the guards were too rough with him and insults one of them. However, Oscar immediately suppresses Fran and explains the main rule: absolute silence in the presence of superiors. Opening your mouth is only allowed when given permission. Fran gets a buzz cut and is led to his group. The teenagers, marked with bloodstains on their chins, watch propagandist videos. They all greet the newcomer in unison with a rehearsed slogan. When Fran tries to speak, Oscar stops the video, and again, everyone recites the rule of silence in unison. Fran is unsettled by such discipline and realizes that he won't have an easy time here. Each day follows a strict schedule: watching videos about respecting adults and proper behavior, group meals in the dining hall, and mandatory physical exercises, all under the vigilant eyes of the supervisors. One of them stands out: Nando, a supervisor who doesn't conform to the school's appearance standards, setting a bad example for the teenagers. The residents of the boarding school also see a psychologist who inquires about their deepest fears and their relationships with their parents. Fran reveals that his father never loved him, just like his mother who left Luis when Fran was a child. The school's staff gather for a meeting. They discuss the upcoming day of freedom for the teenagers. On this day, most rules are relaxed, and the youths are allowed to have fun. Nando, being new, becomes the butt of jokes since he's unfamiliar with all the school's activities. He vents his anger on one of the teenagers during lunch, while the others continue eating, pretending not to notice their colleagues beating. Nando miscalculates his strength and ends up beating the boy severely. The school's director disapproves of Nando's actions, reminding him that parents pay a significant amount of money not for their children to be abused. After a conversation with the director, Oscar approaches Nando and subtly indicates that his actions go against the school's rules. After being punished, Fran leaves the room. Unnoticed by the guards, he sneaks through the dimly lit corridors of the boarding school. A floor below, he enters the section for the most defiant rule breakers. Those who have erred, partially or completely, are isolated from the outside world. Fran removes his headphones and mask in an attempt to help the boy next to him, who pleads for Fran to end his suffering, unable to bear it any longer. Guards rush in at the sound of screams. Fran manages to hide in one of the rooms, but not for long. When a guard enters, Fran attacks him with unprecedented rage. Two of the guards' partners rush to help, subdue Fran, and take him away. But the punishment isn't only for him, it's for the entire group. Oscar orders the teenagers to lie on the floor, propping themselves up with their chins. Occasionally, supervisors turn on the lights and loud music. After this night, Fran will have the same bloody mark on his chin as the others. Meanwhile, the parents are also invited for a meeting with the psychologist. Luis openly admits that he doesn't understand his son and has never been able to connect with him. The psychologist assures that after the rehabilitation program, their relationship will improve. As an example, the psychologist presents Sandra and her parents. They talk about the changes in Sandra's life after returning from the boarding school. The story ends with the girl urinating. Following the psychologist's advice, Luis enters his son's room. On the computer, he finds a video where Fran is having fun with his friends, and Luis is present in the video as well. Fran had surreptitiously filmed his father while he was at work. The sight of his son's work brings a smile to Luis's face. The next day, Luis visits the boarding school to take his son home. Oscar doesn't oppose it but shows Luis the video of Fran beating up a guard. Oscar convinces Luis not to take Fran home. During the viewing of another video, the teenagers make a joke. The supervisor hears it and takes the entire group to work off their infraction. The boys' eyes are covered, their hands tied, and they are forbidden from sitting down. Only those who endure the longest will escape punishment. The rest face the same fate as the boy previously seen. Meanwhile, parents attend another training session. Luis starts talking to Sandra's parents. The couple is concerned about their daughter's psychological state but believes that visiting the psychologist will help. The next day, the offenders are brought food, but there's not enough for everyone. A fight breaks out among the teenagers, resulting in all their food being taken away. During the night, on the second day of punishment, Helena approaches the cell. She records all the horror on video, intending to have evidence of the inhumane methods being used in this place. Nando catches her and takes her to Oscar. However, the potential leak of information doesn't bother Oscar, as he considers the use of such methods perfectly normal. On the third day of torture, Fran becomes the last and is taken into a room. Meanwhile, Luis invites Sandra's mother to have lunch together. They feel sympathy towards each other. Sandra finds the videos of the tortures uploaded by Helena. She recalls how she herself went through all these tortures. Her mental state can't take it anymore, and she goes to the rooftop, hoping to finally free herself from her experiences. The director reprimands Oscar because of that video, leading to even more control from the supervisors. Sporting activities push them to their limits, moral and physical violence continue, and this isn't the full extent of Oscar's methods. One day, Fran freezes in place and refuses to do anything. He's taken to the sensory deprivation section. Fran is tied, his ears and eyes covered. Due to the absence of external stimuli, his brain starts producing hallucinations. The day of freedom arrives, meaning Fran's punishment is over. Boys and girls are gathered in the gym to practice waltz. Fran is also present but not participating. He sits on a chair, looking cynically at the rest. One of the teenagers, inspired by Fran's courage, freezes. Immediately, he stands up to Oscar, and despite this, more teenagers who refuse to dance follow suit. Nando has to restrain Oscar to prevent him from harming anyone. Luis tells Sandra's mother about his intention to take his son out of the boarding school. She supports his decision, as she herself has felt the effects of what they do to teenagers, even though she hasn't been there. The next day, Luis comes to the boarding school to pick up his son, but it doesn't evoke any emotions in Fran. The boy walks silently to the car. Upon arriving home, he immediately goes to his girlfriend. Fran listens to her excitedly, but he remains silent about his own experiences. Several days pass, yet he still hasn't spoken to his father. Fran decides to throw away all his belongings, thus severing ties with his past. Fran continues to ignore his father, and when alone, he screams at the top of his lungs from the window. But one time, He starts repeating the slogans that have been ingrained in him for a lifetime. A dialogue ensues between the son and the father. Fran accuses his father of all the suffering he had to endure because of him. Luis claims he didn't know about the horrors taking place there. The son and father drive in the car through rainy weather. Luis stops near one of the buildings and hands over some documents. Fran can't see who is standing in front of his father. He asks if it was his mother. Luis, in tears, exits the car and stands in the middle of the road. The son approaches his father and hugs him, conveying forgiveness.